Midnight on Earth podcast with your host, Jake Weaver. Engineered by Cedric Swan.
Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of Midnight on Earth. I'm your host, Jake Weaver, and we are here to bring you more knowledge, more light, and more love, and more incredible, rare interviews with people from the other place, the place that we go to after we leave this dimension, after our time is up. We are doing a lecture episode today with the one, the only, really the only. I'm sure there's a lot of people with this name. I actually had a landlord with this name once, but we know who this is. Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead is going to be on the show today in ethereal form. His spirit is going to be with us as we listen to these very rare interviews, one of which is called The History of Rock and Roll from Jerry's Perspective, and the other is his final recorded interview. Incredible information. And usually I would say that I have a guest co-host with me. It's usually Britt Anderson. Unfortunately, she could not make it today. And the reason that we are doing back-to-back lecture episodes is because the guest that I had scheduled for this week, I wanted it to be very fresh, record, release. Could not make it at the last second. This person could not be here. So, as I like to keep my episodes very fresh, I find that if I have too many pre-recorded waiting to be released, it changes the energy. So because of that, we're going to be listening to this. So this is very impromptu. This is very stream of consciousness on the fly, as they say, as we listen to this. But we're going to learn so much because Jerry Garcia is just as powerful a spiritual person as any of the guests, whether graduated or still in this dimension. He's one of the most spiritual people out there. He did so much spiritual work, it's almost unfathomable. The work continues, even though it's been almost 30 years since his graduation happened. Super mind-blowing. Before we get into that, I need you to do something for me. Follow me on Instagram at midnight_on_earth. That is the address. You can follow me there. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you go to get your podcasts, click that button that connects us so you know exactly what is going on when we have these really once in a lifetime episodes. I don't know if I'm ever going to do this again. There's not that many long, in-depth Jerry Garcia focused interviews out there. So when these things happen, you get that notification, you know instantly. And you can tell a friend, tell someone that you know that loves these type of podcasts. Look at everything we cover, from the mystery school aspect of psychedelia, mystery schools, channeling. So much good information. You know who needs it. Bring them here. midnightonearth.com. And of course, she's not here, but our incredible sponsor, Bryn Anderson, and her company, Vital Force Herbs. The most incredible blends. You've really never seen tinctures like this. There's so many tinctures out there, and there's so many fantastic herbalists that make these tinctures. Bryn's tinctures, her blends, the crystal infusion. She's not here right now, so I can just totally go off. The crystal infusion, it does something. It activates, it amplifies. And that crystal infusion process, which is a proprietary process, is what makes her blend stand out. each of these blends are focused on specific wellness needs. Grounded calm, lung fortifier, resilient heart, menstrual ease. There's so many different things that she addresses with these blends. And there's nothing really else like it. I mean, you have to try it, and you can try it with this discount code. You can even order just one bottle. It'd be like not even $10 with the discount. What discount? This discount. Midnight, MIDNIGHT, 30% off any order, including just one bottle. Free shipping on any order, including just one bottle. Try it. Tell me what you think. I already know what you're going to say, but you have to experience it yourself. VitalForceHerbs.com. Go there, support brand, support this podcast. Okay. So now that that is out of the way, we're going to talk about Jerry Garcia by reading his bio. And if you don't know, if you've never heard that name before, somehow, he, of course, was the lead guitarist and the driving creative force behind the legendary American band, the Grateful Dead. One of the greatest bands ever. Their accomplishments are unparalleled. So I guess we can say the greatest band ever. Musical collaborators coming together in a magical way to create true magic. They used the music to make the magic. And then when they realized this was happening, they went full speed ahead. They hit the accelerator on the whole thing. As soon as they noticed what was going on themselves, which I'm sure Jerry will talk about, but we do have to read his bio. So here we go, people. This is Jerry Garcia's biography, straight from Wikipedia, to be completely transparent. Not that I don't need to be, but just it's there. This is what they wrote. So if you hear something that seems off, that's send me an email. Let's correct Wikipedia. Supposedly you can edit these. So here we go. Jerome John Garcia. August 1st, 1942, August 9th, 1995, was an American musician who was the principal songwriter, lead guitarist, and a vocalist, the main vocalist, with the rock band, the Grateful Dead, which he co-founded and which came to prominence during the counterculture of the 1960s. Although he disavowed the role, Garcia was viewed by many as the leader of the band. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1994 as a member of the Grateful Dead. As one of its founders, Garcia performed with the Grateful Dead for the band's entire 30-year career. Garcia also founded and participated in a variety of side projects, which are all amazing, by the way, including the Saunders Garcia Band, the Jerry Garcia Band, Old and in the Way, the Garcia Grisman and Garcia Kahn acoustic duos, Legion of Mary, and New Riders of the Purple Sage. He also released several solo albums and contributed to a number of albums by other artists over the years as a session musician. He was well known for his distinctive guitar playing and was ranked 13th in Rolling Stone's 100 Greatest Guitarists of All Time cover story in 2003. Well, guess what, Rolling Stone? I'm going to put Jerry Garcia as number one. Sorry. And the 2015 version of the list, he was ranked at 46. Oh, what? Yeah. Okay. Anyways. And then in 2023, he was bumped back up to number 34. Number one, Rolling Stone. Obviously, you missed something there. Garcia was renowned for his musical and technical ability, particularly his ability to play a variety of instruments and sustain long improvisations. Garcia believed that improvisation took stress away from his playing and allowed him to make spur-of-the-moment decisions that he would not have made intentionally. In a 1993 interview with Rolling Stone, Garcia noted that, quote, "My own preferences are for improvisation, for making it up as I go along. the idea of picking, of eliminating possibilities by deciding. That's difficult for me. Originating from the days of the acid test, these improvisations were a form of exploration rather than playing a song already written. Later in life, Garcia struggled with diabetes. In 1986, he went into a diabetic coma that nearly cost him his life. Although his overall health improved somewhat after the incident, he continued to struggle with obesity, smoking, and long-standing heroin and cocaine addictions. He was staying in a California drug rehab facility when he died of a heart attack in August 1995 at age 53. My God, that's so young. He had so much life left, or did he? Truly a man that burned the candle at both ends, but did it for service. He totally dedicated his life to service, nonstop. And guess what? He was absolutely rewarded for his service, but money was never the goal. For the Grateful Dead organization, as we know, talking about the corporate structure of that organization with good friend of the show, Wendy Weir, Bob Weir's sister, who we love so much, and she's a great friend of mine now. So that's the bio, but there's just so much more. How do you quantify or put into words something almost indescribable? I try constantly. They were able to get to a point where they understood how to work with the energy of the crowd, the energy of the music, the energy of the instruments, and open a portal, truly a portal. And it was a collaborative portal. It wasn't just the band. It was also the energy of the audience, amplified by the psychedelics. The brainwave states were in such a way, the musical frequencies, the lights together created a situation that opened up a portal, that allowed this love energy to come through. Truly God, but we don't want to put a name on it, the mystery, but there was this other presence that could be channeled through the music. The musicians would often talk about how they felt played by the music. Yes, that was happening because they opened up to inspiration, allowed for this energy to come through, and eventually they allowed a space for this entity to come through, which usually showed up in the drums and space segment, especially into the 80s and the 90s. But that's what it really was about. It was a traveling mystery school. And we've covered that on this show, episode 48. We talked about that in depth with the hosts of the No Simple Road podcast, which is a Grateful Dead themed podcast, a jam band themed podcast put out by the Osiris Network, which I was a guest on their show way back in their episode 48. They returned the favor. They came on my show, episode 48. And we went into the metaphysical, spiritual aspects of the Grateful Dead world deeply. We took a deep dive. We really engaged with that. So check that out if you want to take the deep dive. But now we're going to listen to these interviews with this person who did so much work. Jerry Garcia picked up one guitar, changed the world. One guy, one guitar, changed the world. One time before Bill Kreutzmann was in the Grateful Dead, Jerry Garcia bought a banjo off Bill's dad. Bill's dad advertised that in the local paper. One guitar, one guy attracted everything, created something that's so unique and so special, a place for the highest energy to present itself. And after he left, everybody just wanted it to continue. They would not let it go. They cannot let it go. They still won't let it go. John Mayer's now in the hot seat, in the lead guitar role, playing these huge shows at the Sphere. 20,000 people every night, sold out. So many derivative bands and tribute bands are super successful. There's a band called Joe Russo's Almost Dead. They charge like $90 for a ticket now. They're playing jazzed up, super high energy versions of Grateful Dead music. They're really great, accomplished players. It's mind-blowing. This was so special. And the people that experienced it know this. On every level, nobody wants to let it go. Everybody, especially in America, wants to keep that energy in this dimension at all costs. It cannot dissipate. No one wants to let it go, which is so huge. And it's not going to go away. 300 years from now, people are going to be talking about the Grateful Dead. There could still be a Dead and Company band touring with different musicians after the original members leave, the ones that are still left. They could just be replaced over and over and over, and the thing could just keep going with the right people. But no one can replace Jerry. No one can even come close to his ability because of his psychedelic trips, I believe. A lot of his psychedelic experiences allowed him to gain a level of understanding, a level that allowed for the highest frequency energy to come through his guitar playing. He was truly an egoless guitar player. But I can go on and on and on and on and on. Let's hear what Jerry has to say about it. So this is an interview that I found that was supposed to be for a mini series called The History of Rock and Roll. This is the unedited version of this interview. We're going to listen to this just like any other lecture episode. We're going to listen to this. We're going to take notes. Me and you, listener, just me and you this time. And then we're going to reconvene at the end. And I'll poke in the middle here. Just got to poke around. I'm going to poke in the middle. Then afterwards, we're going to talk about both interviews. Whoa! So, super excited to have one of my personal heroes, mentors, incredible friend, spiritual friend that I don't even know. I didn't meet personally, though I met his daughter at a wedding. And I met one of his wives, Mountain Girl. Of course, I took acid with Mountain Girl, actually, and all of the merry pranksters, including Ken Kesey back in 1998. Well, we'll save that for another story, another episode. But now let's listen to this. So here we go. This is in Jerry's own words with the interviewer, who I do not know who this is. But this is going to be a good overview of the Grateful Dead's history and Jerry's perspective on a lot of different things. So here we go. Jerry Garcia. I can't believe this. Jerry Garcia. The history of the 60s counterculture, psychedelia, the Grateful Dead, his own life. Here we go.
You are what you really do. Who I am and what I really do. Let's see. I'm Jerry Garcia, and I play the guitar for the Grateful Dead, amongst other things.
And your own musical influences when you were growing up, who did you listen to as a kid?
Do you really want you really want to hear that? Oh, well.
Well, let me. I can show you some more. When you country music, essentially the whole,
I had lots. I had eclectic influences. Let's put it that way. I heard virtually every kind of music. My father was a musician. My mother was a coloratura, soprano, and I heard every kind of music. My grandmother loved country music, the Grand Ole Opry, and Harry Owens and his Royal Hawaiians. I heard all kinds of things. My ears were full of music, So plus the popular music of the time, the 40s and 50s, when I was growing up. But I was at the inception of rock and roll. I listened to rhythm and blues. I had an older brother who was a rhythm and blues nut, and so I got rhythm and blues from him. And then rock and roll, as it developed in the 50s, was like my music. That was my native music, so to speak. And that was the thing that made me want to play. Was rock and roll. The first thing I heard when I heard the electric guitar and Chuck Berry and all the great, licks, the rock and roll licks, and just the sound of the electric guitar, I thought, I really want to do that. And I got my first electric guitar when I was 15, and that was it.
And what did you play first?
Well, I first played electric guitar. I took piano lessons as a kid, but it didn't take. So guitar playing was really the first thing I took, where I really wanted to do it. Well, I didn't know that I wanted to do it. I just couldn't stop doing it. But the first thing I got really serious about, in the sense of being rigorous, was the 5-string banjo. And I heard bluegrass music, and that got to be something very important to me. And so I swung off into that for 4 or 5 years, and really started to work hard at the 5-string banjo. And that's where I slowed records down. And, I wanted it to sound exactly right, not just approximately right. And I did that for a while. And then the rock and roll wave came up, with the Beatles and stuff like that. And hey, that looks like it'd be fun to do. And besides, I know this music, and so having a preference for the kind of more like the Chicago sound, the blues sound, the Marshall Chess sound, that sort of thing. Our band, when we started a band, it was kind of more like the Rolling Stones, say, insofar as it was that kind of music. We started playing not quite a blues band, sort of a blues band, and with kind of folk and country and western overtones. So that's my background pretty much. But really, there's nothing I haven't heard. I mean,
So apologizing for the question in advance. The way that the sort of Dead got together in the sort of early stages, and perhaps wrapping the acid test somehow. I mean,
you really want to hear all this stuff? It's so okay. Well, I mean, the Grateful Dead is really a collection of friends, people that were around at the time, and who played some. I mean, not everybody was really. When the Grateful Dead first started, we were called the Warlocks. We had one strong suit. We had Pigpen in the band, and he was this guy from Palo Alto whose father had been a rhythm and blues disc jockey. So for him the blues was very natural, and he played harmonica, and he sang really well, and he really had no real wish to be a performer. We sort of forced him into it because we knew he could do it. And so he was kind of the front man for the band. He was our powerhouse guy, and the rest of us could play better than him, but he could sing better than or anybody else. So he got to be the front man for the band, and it worked well. We ended up kind of playing the divorcees clubs up and down the Bay Area, down the peninsula and East Bay and San Francisco. We ended up playing Broadway in San Francisco, which was about as far as you could go as a band in those days. We were working for the local agent, the guy that booked all the bands in the Bay Area and worked with the union. This guy did, and his name was Al King, and he used to book the strippers and dog acts and magicians and anything you can think of. He was like the guy in the Bay Area, and so we were doing that. That was our circuit. We played typically 6 nights a week, five sets a night. That was what we did. We just did it and did it and did it, and we got good doing it. I mean, it was a great way to get good, and we were young enough to love it, And it was also, we made enough so we could quit our day jobs. That was what we did. That happened immediately. That was the first thing that happened with us. So we were already, like burning out on the professional level that was available to us about the time the acid test came to our attention. But we were already from Palo Alto. We all knew Kesey, and we all knew friends of ours that were involved with him. We'd all taken acid ourselves. And so it seemed natural to go. We got invited actually to one of these parties. This is before there were acid tests even. There was just parties. And we got invited to one of these parties. We went down there. We plugged all our stuff in and played for about a minute. And then we all freaked out. But we made a good impression on everybody in that minute, So we were invited to the next one. And so we just started playing at these things. They were great fun, and they were very liberating for us because, after all, I mean, we'd come to our like Sunday night shows, and after having spent the day stoned on acid up in the woods somewhere, and we come down to the bars and play, Sunday night. It was like, we were playing like sort of maliciously, because it was so lame, at that time. We were pretty burned out on it. And so we were ready for something completely freeform. It kind of went along with where we were going, which was we were experimenting with psychedelics as much as we were playing music. So that those things had a happy new home in the acid test, which was exactly freeform enough. And where we had no significance. We weren't famous. Nobody came to the acid test to see us particularly. We got to play or not play, depending on how we felt. We could play anything we could think of, which meant that we didn't have any constraints on our performance. We didn't have to be good even or recognizable even. So we had an opportunity to visit highly experimental places, under the influence of highly experimental chemicals before a highly experimental audience. It was ideal, and that was something that we got to do long enough to get used to it, and that's the kind of territory that I think very few people have been lucky enough to have that it was like a gift. Very few people have been lucky enough to get that. And not only that, we had the peripheral perks of getting to hang out with Kesey and Ken Babbs and Neil Cassidy and a lot of interesting people, an awful lot of interesting people, and meeting more each time. The acid test would perform Wavy Gravy and so on. All these people are people that we met through the aegis of the acid test, so to speak, and the acid test started expanding at an incredible rate. I mean, it started from about enough people to fill a room this size to enough to fill the Longshoremen's Hall in San Francisco, and it had virtually no advertising or anything, and you had to sort of be a detective to even find out where they were going to be, but even so, they got to be immensely popular, and more people came to them. More and more people got high. It was an incredible situation. I mean, it seemed like after about 3 or 4 months, it seemed like the acid test was going to take over the world in about a year. It was totally fun, and it was a great. It was a wonderful multimedia event. Is what I can say. It really worked. It was absolutely entertaining. It was 100% fun. That's all I can say, really. And it was utterly cosmic to boot.
One thing that was interesting to me about the acid test is that it's a breakdown between the audience and the performer, or something you try and do.
Yeah, there really was no audience, to speak of. I mean, there was no entertainer entertained saying. Everybody was entertaining. Everything there was entertaining. Every event, everything that happened was entertaining. And you didn't need expertise. You know what I mean? So you didn't need the musician chauvinism. You didn't. The artist chauvinism. Like, I can do something you can't do. Now all that stuff went up in smoke, which I think was very good. It was good for everybody. Everybody learned a lot from that process. I think everybody who ever went to an acid test came out a different person, and loved it. I mean, that's the sort of thing it was.
Were you involved were you two have been involved in the acid test graduation that Bill Graham pulled the plug up? He's talking about the mic, isn't it? Do you know the story of that?
Yeah, I remember there was kind of a deal. Well, see, at that time we had regular shows. So the acid test, there was a conflict there. We had a regular show, and the acid test graduation was happening that night. Now, it's possible that somebody was trying to use it as a kind of a power play, Well, I don't know, but by then we knew that if somebody was going to pay us to play, we had a responsibility. The acid test was not that kind of scene. It wasn't about getting paid. You know what I mean? It wasn't really about that. Everybody paid to get into it. Everybody, we paid each $1 to get into it. So it wasn't that kind of thing. And then all the money went into a plastic sack. If somebody was hungry, they took a couple of dollars out and went and got some hamburgers. You know what I mean? It was totally,
Sorry, roll out.
You rolled out.
Totally ...
Totally. It was like totally.
Yeah, totally. Totally, I don't know, communistic.
Great.
Do it.
Mark.
What if you comment on essentially? on Kesey, Cassidy, Wavy. I mean, and the kinds of roles they had, and mainly Cassidy actually.
Well, Cassidy is one of the kind of people that you know. He was such an overwhelming trip. Cassidy, I don't know. It's hard to even know what to say about Cassidy. He was so singular. I mean, it's just, well, for one thing, he was like the best, the ultimate sight gag person. You know what I mean? Physical comedy person. You know. Plus, he was also the world's best stand-up comic too. He had an incredible mind. That he would do this thing. He did it to everybody. Everybody has reported on this. He did it to everybody. You might not see him for months, you know, and he would pick up exactly where he left off the last time he saw you. You know, like in the middle of a sentence, he would pick up and you first of all, you go, what the hell? And then you realize, oh yeah, this is that story he was telling me last time, you know, and it was like so mind-boggling. You couldn't believe that he was doing it. He used to do this thing that was this was something that killed me, and I saw him do it a lot of times. He'd take a dollar bill, you know, from anybody, you know, and take a dollar bill, and he'd put his hand on it like this, and he'd say the numbers, you know, the serial number, and you know, I saw him get it right like 2 or 3 times. The serial numbers, you know what I mean? He just had this. He had this thing, you know, and his driving. Yeah, if you go for a drive with him, it was like the ultimate fear experience. You know that you knew you were going to die. There was no question about it, and it was something so unbelievable. He loved big Detroit irons, you know, big cars. And he like driving in San Francisco, he would go down those hills, you know, like 50 miles and 60 miles an hour and do corners, you know, blind corners going down those hills. You know, if you can imagine like going down Franklin, you know, like top speed, you know what I mean? You know, disregarding anything, stop signs, signals, all the time talking to you. And maybe fumbling around with a little teeny roach, you know, trying to put it in a matchbook, you know, and also tuning the radio maybe, and also talking to whoever else is in the car, and never seeming to ever put his eyes on the road ever, you know. And this is like you'd be just dying, you know, you'd be dying, and it would effectively take you past that whole fear of death thing, you know. It's like a difficult experience because there's nothing else like it. Apart from like almost like surviving an airplane crash, possibly, or something. I don't know what. And I mean, it was just so incredible, you know, it just his output, you know what I mean? And he felt he was the first person I met who he himself was the art. You know what I mean? He was an artist and he was the art also. And he was doing it consciously as well, you know. So he did things. He worked with the world. I remember one time after a party, after the Watts acid test, which was particularly strange, and we drove the bus over to the Watts Towers for a minute or two, and we got out and looked at them, you know. And we were, you know, it's dawn. We went over to Wavy Gravy's house, which was down in like, off of Western, you know, way the hell off somewhere funny in Los Angeles. And they had a little house, and we had the bus there, and a bunch of us are sitting on the lawn, and we're all kind of crunched from being up all night, stoned on acid. You know, it's like the dawn. It's Sunday morning now, the dawn, and the bus is parked across the street. From our point of view, we're on the lawn, and it's Sunday morning early, and here's Neil, you know, and he's ripped his shirt off. He has no shirt on now. And now he's no shirt, no shoes. And these funky old chinos they always have, they're always like just about to fall off, you know. And he's, first of all, George Walker's driving the bus. So George is driving the bus. And Neil is like the guy directing him into the parking place, you know, a little to the left, a little to the right. And he's doing it all with signals. And he directs him right into a stop sign, an arterial stop sign, and knocks it, it shears it off, boom, and the stop sign falls down. So then Neil gets up, then the bus is parked, and Neil gets up and he's got the stop sign, you know, and he's like kind of trying to make it stand up, you know. And so he's there with this stop sign, and down the street come like two really straight little old ladies, you know, and they're on their way to church Sunday morning, you know. And here's Neil. He's like the cosmic village drunk, you know what I mean? He's like, and he's got the stop sign, you know. They're trying not to see him, you know, and he's doing this whole series of kind of like, good morning, ma'am, you know, kind of pantomime, you know, this extravagant thing all the time with, he would kind of like stand up the stop sign and then walk away from it and it'd start to fall and he'd grab it just as I'm about to hit, you know, and all this stuff happening. It was like amazingly great. It was just beautiful, perfect timing, you know, and it's just extraordinarily beautiful, you know, and the way his body moved, the way he looked and everything like that was just absolutely, his face is so expressive. He would go through millions of expressions, just millions of them. And just his whole body language and everything was so communicative. It was just amazing. It was, I was dying. I thought I was going to die. It was so hilarious. It was absolutely perfect. You know, it was like a little silent movie, a silent ballet, you know, in the morning. It lasted about maybe a minute and a half, you know, 2 minutes, but it was perfect. You know, it was like a perfect moment. It was just great. And I mean, Neil was that guy. I mean, he just could do that. You know, that's who he was. You know, he was that guy in the real world. You know, he was this something. He scared a lot of people. A lot of people thought he was crazy. You know, a lot of people were afraid of him, and most people I know didn't understand him at all. You know, but he was like a musician in a way. I mean, he liked musicians. He always liked to hang out with musicians. That's why he sort of picked up on us and me, and we hung out together a lot. And he liked the company of musicians.
When you were living in Haight, was he around during that?
Yeah, he was off and on. He stayed up in our attic when we were in 710. He had a little camp up there, you know, with a mattress, and his old chinos, his old jeans, and stuff like that were up there. And he would come in and hang out for a week or so every month or so, you know, every couple of months maybe, you know, he'd come in and yeah.
About the Haight, when you were during the period of time when you would do free concerts in the Panhandle, I mean,
yeah.
Could you give us a little context on that? Why you would, what the community was like, and how the dead contributed?
Well, there wasn't really. We were, you know, there were a lot of people there that were like us. They were people whose whole lives they'd been a little bit different, you know, from everybody else. They were the people that were looking for something different. They would have become beatniks. You know what I mean? They were all people who were like influenced by the beatniks in a sense, and they were artists and they were poets and writers and all kinds of people. But they were all people whose life experience had been that they were a little out of whack with everything else, you know, during high school or, you know, their whole lives, and they sort of came together and it was just an ideal place for it because the rent was real cheap. The houses were wonderful. They're beautiful old Victorians, you know, and you get 4 or 5 people and you can rent a huge, wonderful Victorian house, fix it up any way you want. And it was great. It was a great way to live. And you know, there was no community in the sense of we are a community. But then after the first thing called the human being, that thing, it was like, yeah, there is all these people that we're all, you know, it's like, yeah, there is a community. There is this whole big community. You know, it's all these people who potentially know each other. We're all those people who are the weird ones, you know. And it was all of a sudden you discovered all these people who were like you know, and that was the neat part about it. First, that was the first thing. Now, of course, that disappeared immediately. I mean, as soon as it started getting to be publicized, you know, then it all, of course, it evaporated immediately, you know, and it no longer was important, you know. It no longer had any power. I mean, really. You know, it did for the first couple of minutes, and then it went whoosh, you know, and it was gone. And you know, it wasn't relevant anymore, not to the people who started there, you know. And as soon as that happened, everybody started to just disappear. You know, they disappeared over to Marin County and other places, and because nobody wants to be in the center of the spotlight. You know, not in your life, maybe in your work, but not in your life. And you know, those of us who were performers, like the Grateful Dead and stuff, we just performed, and we at that time we started going national. We started touring the whole United States, so it was no longer community to us in the real sense. In the real sense, that America became our community, and that was it. It was really a moment. There was like a breath there for a moment. That was like an open door. It's like, ooh, look, then bam, it slammed shut again immediately. And everybody finally moved out. The original people there, everybody left when the tanks came down the street. The National Guard came. I mean, the Haight-Ashbury, like what was more harmless? It was totally harmless. And the reaction ultimately was the National Guard, fixed bayonets, tanks on Haight Street. It was like, come on, it was like something of an overreaction, and it was so completely skewed, it didn't make any sense anymore. That was it, everybody who had anything going for them really left after that. That was it. That was the end of it.
But there was something that everyone took with them. I mean, something did happen.
Well, there was a moment there. There was a moment there where there was a vision. There was a very clear, wonderful vision but it had to do with everybody acting in good faith. It had to do with everybody behaving right. You know what I mean? It had to. Sorry. There was a lot to it. It wasn't a simple thing. It was deep. There was a lot to it.
That if we could.
Yeah.
That's speed.
Yes, speed.
So more on the point that essentially what happened at that one moment when it was together.
Well, what happened was that everybody got a glimpse of something. I can't say what it is. I don't know what it is. I know, to me, it was might have been something like limitless possibilities. You know what I mean? Something like that, maybe. But I mean, the thing was that in the meantime, in my life, what had happened to me just a little before that was that I had some incredible psychedelic experiences that were so cosmic, they were so huge in scope. You know what I mean? That I knew that I knew that all of a sudden I had to revise everything that I thought I knew about anything. I had I said, this stuff is coming from somewhere. If it's not out there, it's coming from me. It's coming from my mind, my brain. That means my brain has an infinite amount of capacity in there that I had no sense of. I didn't know anything about it. But there it was, and I've seen it. I not only saw it, but I walked around in it. I had a million incarnations in it. I lived and died in it. You know what I mean? I had experiences beyond anything I've ever experienced, more real than anything I ever experienced in this world, And I mean, I was packing that knowledge around with me, you know what I mean? So the thing of this door opening was it was one of those things that we were all inducing it as well as perceiving it, you know what I mean? It's hard to say. I think it was probably everybody saw what they wanted to see or what they needed to see or whatever it was. They'd all been brought there somehow for that moment, and you can't even say what it was or when it was or what it boiled down to or anything like that. It wasn't even like that. It was just something, and but for me, it's been enough energy to keep me going this long, and I don't see any end, at least for me, in terms of my work, of information in terms of, do I need to go looking for material? No, I don't need to go looking for material. I have an infinite amount of material has been deposited, and all I have to do is tune into it, which is real easy to do because it's always there, so it's, I mean, I don't know how to say it except that it's real to me. You know what I mean? That those experiences were real to me, and nobody can take that away from me. The realness of it. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter to me whether it has any historical value or whether it's measurable in some objective way. I don't care. It doesn't matter. For me, the subjective reality is what counts. I mean, what I experienced is what happened to me, and that was there's a lot. I know a lot of people who shared something like it, their own version of it, and who are still moving with that energy. That energy is propelling us, and that energy has also gained enough momentum over the years to do everything. I mean, it is partly responsible for all the things that have happened historically since then, in some way. It's part of it. It's part of the gain in consciousness that the last half of the century has represented. And that includes all the things that go with it, all the hardware, the technology, the brain craft, that has subsequently sprung up, and it's still rolling. It's still happening. People are still sort of that experience is now available.
Well, what was incredible for me is that I felt everything that you just said, phrased differently in my own way.
Yeah.
In Vermont.
Yeah, right.
Through the music.
I don't think it's place. It's not a place. It's not place specific. You know what I mean? It's not site specific.
In terms of rock and roll music, that was the music that flowed around on the albums that made people like me in different locations feel the same thing. We were doing, psychedelics at the same time.
Well, once you were touched by that, it was like dog shit on your shoe. You couldn't get it off, or it's part of everything you did. You know what I mean? You're sort of touched by this wand. Ding. Okay. Now some percentage of everything you do is going to have that thing in it. And it'll communicate it to anybody who's can dig it.
So when you toured in the 60s, then and going to towns, probably have never seen anything remotely like you,
That's for sure.
I mean, how were people responding? Were they into the groove, or were they?
Well, the audiences caught on. They always caught on. The people in the world, were like, not here. You don't. We walk into a Holiday Inn or someplace to say, oh no, not here. And we got that kind of reaction the first couple of years we were out. It was like, because people were used to seeing freaks then, and that was still a big novelty. So that was fun for us, because it was the last chance you had to shock people just by the way you looked, just by the way you were. You didn't even have to think about it or work at it at all. You could just walk down the street and people go, oh my God. That was fun. That was we got in on the last of that, probably. The music. Well, the Grateful Dead has always been like a very chancy musical experience. And back then, what we were doing had the nature of it was that some nights it would be just awful, and some nights it would be wonderful. And if people caught us on an awful night, they went away going, "What was that?" And if they caught us on a wonderful night, they enjoyed it and they came back again. It's not totally a roll of the dice. Something we never had any control of. We still don't have any control over it, but now our bad nights are accomplished. Now we can at least sound decent. If we were not experiencing authentic inspiration. If we're experiencing authentic inspiration, then something magical sort of takes over. But if we're not, now we can at least sound professional. It's in tune. Everything is like it's supposed to be. It's an okay performance.
The songs that you were doing at that time, you were doing some covers like Trying to Be Good, but what were, and some of your own music? I mean, how did you decide what to play?
We always had a problem with deciding what to play. We've never been able to decide what to play at all. So back then we were much more free form, because we just were not able to decide what to play. So somebody would just start something, and the way we've handled it since then is that we still can't decide what to play, but but. Now at least we have a lot of stuff to choose from.
Your songwriting with Hunter, I mean, is that about? I mean,
you mean my songwriting. It's one of those things. It's a default situation. You know what I mean? It's like somebody in the band's got to. It's like one of those things where, well, who's going to play bass? The guy that plays guitar worst. That's the way it is in most bands. There's like certain things. So the writing songs was a default thing, but all of us do some writing. So that I never felt that bad about it. But for me, it's one of those things like a craft. It's like throwing a pot. It's a craft. There's a certain craft to it. It's not for me. I don't know whether my songwriting rises to the level of art. There's one or two songs I think I've written, and Hunter and I have written, that I think are truly wonderful, and but whether anybody else thinks that, I don't know, and I certainly don't feel like I'm a wonderful songwriter. My output is very small. I'm not prolific by any means. Hunter's output compared to mine is like I'd say about 50 to 1. He's like so prolific. But Hunter and I have a wonderful working relationship, so it's always a happy experience writing with him, and that's usually I don't write unless I write with him. And David is another collaborator. David Grisman is another person I collaborate with comfortably. For me, that's pretty much what I do. I am pretty much a collaborator. I'm pretty much a person who works with other people, not a person who works alone.
Well, the band, the Grateful Dead, is one of the most collaborational and musical groups there is. I mean, I don't know if
Collaborationistic. What is that? What? Never mind. What would that word be?
you work so well as a team. You understand each other. Maybe was it partly through the kind of freeform work you did in the 60s that you developed more? You weren't doing songs so much, you're actually making music.
Well, what it really has to do with it, the people in the Grateful Dead are pathologically anti-authoritarian. So it's just, I mean, nobody can tell anybody what to do ever under any circumstances. So that produces a certain amount of, also, if you ask somebody to play something, they'll never play it. So it produces a kind of music by confluence, or by friction, or by opposites, by it's conflicted. And that makes it interesting. It has a great deal of tension, because everybody plays so differently from each other. I mean, it's like nothing on this earth will make me play like Bob. Nothing on this earth will ever make me play like Bob. And I'll be damned if I'm going to play like Phil. You know what I mean? It's like, It's one of those kind of things. Each one of us experiences some version of that, And it's not even something we consciously do. We just do it. It's like, it's as pure as mother's milk. You know what I mean? It's pure innocence. It's like, there's no premeditation. It's just something that's there. We never decided it. We don't inspect it. We don't deal with it. It's just there, And I've never once in all the years we played together have I ever been able to predict what Bob will play or what Phil will play in a given situation, or the drummers for that matter. I mean, I just have no idea. I don't have a clue, and it's to me that makes it really interesting. You know what I mean? It's just there's something. The band always has this quality that is totally unpredictable, and there's just no way that you can say what it's going to sound like. I mean, it changes completely, its character completely, from night to night, and it just. I mean, there's just no way to stop it, So it's one of those things. It's not like how did we arrive at it? It's just like how can we escape it?
There aren't many bands that work that way.
I don't think so. And our lighting designer works that way too. So I mean, the whole show has to work.
What are they gonna do? She said, I don't.
No, yeah. What happened to the old days then? I like that.
Yeah, speed.
Mark.
Hi, please.
We may use a clip of I Know You Rider from the old Avalon. That, do you have any, what was the history of that song?
The song?
I mean, how did you bring it?
Jesus. Well, it's an old folk song. I mean, it used to be like a standby, really, in the coffee houses and stuff like that. I never performed it as a bluegrass person or as a. I never was a folkie very much, I just wasn't that good, I mostly played in bands with other people. But I always liked that song, no matter who did it, And there was like all kind of these folk versions of it and stuff like that. There were really modern versions of it, really. But I always liked the song. So I just of the ones that I could remember, the arrangements, the versions of it melodically, and as far as this chord structure and so forth, that was the one that I sort of culled from my own memory. I don't remember where I learned it. I don't remember who taught it to me or why I chose it, except it's just a nice song. And I thought it would be ideal to do with an electric band. I viewed an electric band as really, it's strings, it's still a string band fundamentally, even though it's electric. And the addition of the drums and that made it sort of more like bluegrass, which is a more intensely rhythmic kind of music. So for me, the elements were there. It was like I viewed the band, the Grateful Dead or the Warlocks or whatever, from the very beginning as like, well, this is a blues band in one sense. In other words, the instrumentation and everything is traditionally what a blues band has had, and in that sense, this is a traditional band. But it's also a kind of mutated like a bluegrass band on a certain level. I mean, you could approach it. Bluegrass is a nice metaphor for how music can work as a group. In other words, bluegrass is a conversational music, and I thought it'd be nice to have an electric band that was that way. It was conversational, where the instruments talk to each other, and it's a way to organize music. So for me, I know your writer, and the arrangement, particularly the Grateful Dead arrangement that Grateful Dead uses, has a lot of conversation in it, and the instruments kind of talk to each other, and that was the sense that I thought that was a model for how a band could work. You know what I mean? And it's extracted from all kinds of things, but that's fundamentally an early model of how a band could work. So, which is my throw out. It's what I threw out. Say, okay, how can a 5-piece, which we originally were, a 5-piece electric band work? How can it relate? How can the instruments relate to each other? What would their roles be? And so forth. So that was it, with bits and pieces of regular stuff. So, like in blues, one kind of style of blues, the two guitars, like Jimmy Reed, say, two guitar and a harmonica style of blues, the way the instruments work there is there's a conversation between the guitars. One guitar plays low runs, and the other guitar plays little high licks, less frequently. But they stay out of each other's register. They stay out of each other's range, and it's a very pretty sound. And the bass plays, just simple stuff in the bottom. And the harmonica plays like over the top. And there's a sense to it. And it makes it very transparent because the instruments are open. Their discussion is like open. There's a lot of air in there. It's a pretty way to work. So we sort of patterned the way we work, the way we approach things, kind of extrapolated from that idea. I mean, you have to decide somewhere along the line when you're playing. You have to decide: are we all going to play the same, or are we all going to play differently? I mean, the Grateful Dead always had the disease where we played differently, so that's what we had to work with. But luckily, that approach is not totally unknown. I mean, it's a way a lot of music works that way. Either they work that way because the instrumentation is different, like in a string quartet, or they work that way because the music demands it. Like in a mandolin orchestra, where everybody's playing the same instrument, but they're all playing different parts.
Your own guitar style has evolved over the. I mean, you have so much confidence in. I mean, you don't feel like you have to, go berserk in order to make people hear what you're getting across.
Well, I'm hoping to not have to go berserk at all. I mean, I will if the situation really calls for it. But really, my model for playing is based on a psychedelic experience. Also, my model for, like, when I go out on stage, what am I trying to accomplish? Okay, here's the story. There's one time we played. We were playing at the old Fillmore, and it was after Bill Graham wasn't running it anymore. So there was some independent, like a hippies, some hippies, local hippies, rented it for some cause or another or whatever. Anyway, we were playing there. But Bill wasn't running it, so it was a little bit strange. And there, like, some weird bands were playing on the same bill with us, like maybe, like at that time, say like the Flaming Groovies or somebody, like, what I mean, some of the bands that were happening back at that time. This, like, the late 60s, or the middle late 60s. So this guy who was like sort of a famous freak and that ran around the scene in those days, comes in and he's got this big birthday cake. He's got this huge big birthday cake. I'm looking at it thinking that thing has got to be dosed. I just know this sucker. I know it's dosed. I'm looking at it and and thinking, yeah, that's right. I'm sure it's done. And then I said, but it looked good. It was beautiful. This beautiful big. So I thought, I'll just take a little of the frosting here. Just I'll just take a little snack. So I took this, and then somebody comes in and says, yeah, we put about 800 hits of acid in that frosting, and I go, oh God, oh, Jesus Christ, I'm going to be totally fucking wiped out with this, And by this time, I didn't really enjoy playing, under the influence of psychedelics, because I didn't have the freedom to quit if I wanted to. It wasn't really that much fun to play when you don't have the option. When you don't have options. So, I mean, it wasn't something I was looking forward to. And so I'm sitting there and I'm waiting to play, and we're going, and later, it gets getting later and later and later, and I'm coming on. Now I'm going on, like, the place is swimming, and I start to overhear people, and I'm going off in this paranoid space. I'm thinking, God, this place is full of mafia guys, and they're all trying to kill me. I got that notion in my head. This guy comes in. He looks exactly like a mafia guy. He said, "Here, you want something to drink?" And I'm like, "Poison." No, thanks. It's like everybody is armed to the teeth. They're all trying to kill me. Okay, so I'm waiting there to go on. Oh shit! This is it. This is my last night on Earth. I'm convinced of this now. Still in this psychedelic roar. And so we're going out on stage, to go play, and I'm going out there and I'm thinking, oh God, Jesus, what have I done to deserve this? I'm going to go out there and play, and they're going to fucking kill me, So the only thing I could think of to do was I said, okay, I'm just going to play for my life. I'm going to play for my life. That's what I'm going to do, And so I played for my life, and they let me live. Ever since then, ever since then, I thought that works, for me, is to play for my life, when I forget what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, I play for my life.
What about what comment you have on some of the newer music, funk and rap, that kind of thing?
Well, rap is not music, for one thing. I mean, it isn't music, it's talking. That's what it says, rap. Rap means talking. It's not music. It's talking in meter. It's got rhyme, and it has meter. It has rhythm. It's not music. It's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I have no problem with it. It just isn't music, and people who get to be great at rap are not great musicians. They're just great at rap. It's not, there's no road from rapping into music. You know what I mean? And music is something that you can get better and better and better at. I don't know if you can do that with rap. I don't know whether it has that kind of space in it, or that kind of leads off into infinite numbers of possibilities. Music does. Rap, I don't know whether it does. Rap also has the problem of this language specific. So, if you don't understand English, rap is, it doesn't communicate except that it sounds neat. As far as the new music goes, there isn't a whole lot in the way of new music. There's some stuff which is very derivative. You know what I mean? It's like people who are copying people who copied Robert Johnson. Say, you know what I mean? It's far removed, and it's derivative. It's removed enough from the original source that the people who are playing it don't actually know where it came from, and it's like everything else. It's a way station. Anybody who's young and playing is gonna they're gonna get better or they're gonna quit playing. They're probably not going to get worse. So that means that somebody is on the ride. Somebody's decided to get on the music ride, and I look forward to seeing them improve. With age, if they have anything going for them at all. Otherwise, I don't know. But the level of expertise that's available now to any young musician is, wow, it's incredible. They can all play. I mean, technically speaking, most instruments have enjoyed an incredible increase in technical skill, and that skill, that virtuosity is available to everybody. In the old days, forget it. You just, I mean, if you're going to get good, you pretty much had to teach yourself, pass beyond a certain point. And now these instruments have, there are whole new levels of playing ability, which have made it more. Well, now it's got the thing that everything else has, which is dividing the technique from from the substance. You know what I mean? It's like it suffers in a way from technique. Music does, because technique, you can get caught up in it and lose the substance. For me, music is a emotional. It's emotional in nature. It communicates emotionally. That's one of the things it does really well. And I think that if that isn't the sense of what you're doing, then I don't know what it is.
Oh my God. What an incredible discussion. Well, we'll talk about it at the end, but I just wanted to pop in here as we switch to the next interview, which is Jerry Garcia's final interview, at least his last filmed interview. So we're going to check this out. This is from April 28th, 1995, and just the decline between the two interviews is very noticeable. But we'll just save this for that. But I just wanted to pop in here. So here we go. This is the last filmed interview, April 28th, 1995.
Hey, we want to thank you very much for giving us some of your time. And this is for the Santa Clara Valley Historical Association.
You can give it back to me just before I die. I might want that in like 15, 20 minutes, you know.
Okay, that's a deal. And we wanted to ask your permission that we can use this in our upcoming video and maybe put it out in cyberspace one of these days.
Well, I don't care what you do with it, really. I mean, as long as you don't do something incredibly embarrassing with it. I mean,
absolutely.
I just, you know, I wouldn't do it if it mattered to me about, you know.
We quit doing those porno movies last week. You know?
I still have a few extras though in the car. You know, I mean,
So if the lights get to you, say something and we'll shut them off for a second or something.
are you kidding? I'm a performer.
They just kill me. I don't know how you take it.
Hey, I got them so hot that they actually burned my neck. Honest to God, I really burned. Actually, I came off stage and I had teeny weeny blisters all over.
Oh
my
my
neck.
God.
No shit, I couldn't believe it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's been that hot. I mean, those suckers, dude. They when they crank them up, man,
I don't know how you play. I remember I saw you years when I was
with great pain.
long ago at the Iowa State Fair, at the Iowa State Fairgrounds, and I just thought that was the hottest day on earth. And
That was hot. I remember that.
Cranking.
That was State Fair. We played some ghastly hot places. Oh shit! One time we played the Kansas City, the big deal there.
Right.
What do they call it? You know, it's the football stadium. You know, Big Joe played there.
Right,
you know?
right.
Yeah, we played that place, and it was like the 4th of July or something like that. And it was so humid and hot, and it was like it was measured. Believe it or not, it was measured at 130 degrees inside the stadium at the floor.
Oh
and we were playing, you know, and then passing unconscious bodies. You know?
Oh my
It's
God.
like like a bucket brigade. Boom, they just go, boom, boom, they're going past us. Boom, boom, they're going past. I mean, the whole show is like playing in a death camp. You know, God damn it! It was so humid. I mean, it was like, you know, it was so, you know, it was just, you know, everything was wet. It was everything, but we had it easy. After us, Willie Nelson played. You know, first I think old what's his name? You know, Willie's pal. You know, the other
Waylon?
Texas Waylon, good old Waylon. You know, in his nice hot black coat. You know. And it started raining then, you know, and it was that kind of rain that doesn't have any direction. You know, it's just water in the air. You know? I mean, if you can swim fast enough, you can swim up it. It was so dense. I mean, it was just like, and that was the way it was for the whole rest of the night. It was just like solid water. Unbelievable. And still, like, so, like, hot enough where the water was landing with steam. Right?
You gotta be tough.
I never saw anything like it. Oh my God. Okay,
let's talk about Palo
let's
Alto.
get on to the real stuff.
That's right. Okay. So this is a history of Palo Alto, and it's actually growing into more of a history of Silicon Valley. And
Oh,
you know, one of the things.
what sort of history?
How's our sound? We want the mic where it is now.
Cultural history or a
We're looking at you know, just the development of the whole area, and one of the things that we're really missing. This is a lovely thing that went in.
yeah.
Is we're missing the cultural aspect of it, you know.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, this place. You know, there was a lot happening. I found some interesting connections. When I lived down there as a kid, I went to a little school called Menlo Oaks. Yeah, it was the first year that this school it just been built as a junior high school. That means 7th and 8th grade down in the peninsula. On the good side of the freeway. You know, the bad side of the freeway was East Palo Alto. Now, I used to hang out there, and I went to school there too. Everybody did, and you know, it was just, you know, that's where all the black people live. You know, so then they put this new junior high school, and it you know, we were in the first class or so, the first two classes of it, and it had the thing about it being so close to Stanford, the education, the School of Education and stuff like that, the people that were studying education or one thing or another, were constantly using our little school as a place where you experiment with programs of one sort or another. So I was involved in this thing. They had this thing when I was going there called the Fast Learner Program, where the brightest kids, first they tested everybody, and the brightest kids were all like 3 times a week, went to college level classes in any of about maybe half a dozen classes, or maybe 8 or 9 classes that you could choose whatever you wanted. So I used to take an art class and a science class, and got to do what I wanted, and you'd study just that subject all day long. You didn't do any other stuff. It was great fun. I mean, it was like, so, being there. But anyway, when I was down there, I had this teacher, a tremendously, he got in trouble all the time. This guy did. First of all, I was with all the wiseacres. I was with all the smart kids from this other school that I'd been in, my little school, and they put all the bright kids together. But it was dangerous, because we were little smart asses along with it. So we had this kind of unsteady Second World War vet as our male teacher over in East Palo Alto for our first year of junior high school, 7th grade. A guy named Mr. Green, perfectly nice guy, but just a little, a little bit of battle fatigue in there, whatever the euphemism they had for it in there. Post-traumatic shock syndrome. Anyway, he's a little unsteady, and we kind of did this thing of baiting him, and doing all kinds of pulling weird tricks on him and doing all this stuff. And he finally cracked right up and he quit, and he beat up some kid, and he left his last time I remember seeing him was he was checking counter at the counter in the Safeway. I like him. Hi, Mr. Green. By this time, he's like, his mouth is moving, but nothing's coming out. It's like. Anyway, so as a replacement now for this class, the replacement we got next was an extraordinarily neurotic woman from somewhere, God knows where, who was like one of those women who overdresses for junior high school, like big boobs, right? But one of those like tied down, somebody tied down the metal the day she's like, and she's like furious, she's operating just under furious, she's got fury, free floating fury for anything. And she also snapped, she finally went dying, and that was it for her. So finally we got this other guy, this last guy, and we're thinking now, okay, this guy's going to be easy. We'll just bomb this fucker right out of the water. It's Mr. Johnson. But Mr. Johnson turned out to be great. He turned out to be really amazing. And he talked to the class like we were adults. This is the 7th grade, He talked to us like adults. So, with Mr. Johnson, I learned lots and lots about every kind of thing. I mean, all kinds of things. By the time that grade was over, I was starting to get seriously, I was starting to learn things, and he was incredible. He'd come to school. He had an MGTC, one of those old beautiful MGs, the kind with the big square hoods, not the little pointy coffin shaped ones, but the ones with the big long straight square hood, it's nasty growl, and he also had a Vincent Black Shadow, the fastest accelerating motorcycle at the time. It's like a real monster motorcycle. A teacher on a motorcycle. Who ever heard of such a thing? And he'd come out to school in his motorcycle, his black leather jacket. This is like 1954 or something, he was really, really outrageous. And he and every once in a while, his wife would come, and she was like beautiful. She was a real peach. She looked real great. And Mr. Johnson recognized that I had a certain amount of facility with drawing. I could draw pretty well. And so he had me, wisely, but he also knew that I was a confusion artist, if you can sink it, and, but he got me involved in doing all these things that, murals and, supervising all kinds of stuff and, doing the class plays and all that stuff. And, so I ended up being that guy, and he fed it back to me, and his wife, who was an artist, I'm sure herself, she was real great. They were real helpful. This guy, Mr. Johnson, Dwight Johnson was his name. It turns out at that time, Kesey was like, like a freshman at Stanford. And I didn't know this until later, of course, but Kesey was telling me about how he used to hang out at Dwight Johnson's house, and Dwight Johnson's the guy that turned Kesey onto pot. Now that's what I heard. I mean, in terms of like what kind of a place was Palo Alto? I mean, it was deeply subversive, I mean, but in a visionary kind of far out way, you know what I mean? Because I was ready for anything. After I met Dwight Johnson, I was ready for anything, I mean, I was truly ready for anything. And my further experiences, then I moved back up to the city. My experiences from then on were just reinforced, but I got to be quite I guess a bohemian, This is before they started using the word beatnik or any of that stuff, Beat Generation or any of that was like out and around.
We need to get the thing out of the way.
This thing?
Should we just, maybe
Let me get this out of the way.
We gotta move this.
Sure.
Is that gonna make it better or worse?
It's going to make it worse.
Yeah, let me just move this guy out of the way there. How's that?
Well, you better ask me some direct questions rather than steer both.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and do that. I guess, I'm wondering about some things like, no, this is great. This is very, we talked to guys like Wozniak, and Jobs and the,
Well, they're much younger,
Sure, but what they say is that because, of the place and the counterculture that came before them, that, inspired and drove them to pull the computer out of the mainframe. And so,
I think, I believe it, I believe it because it was hot. It was a happening scene there, really.
Can I interrupt?
By all means, please.
Did you ever see that Civil War series by Ken Burns?
Sure, I know Ken Burns.
Yeah. Oh, you do?
Yeah. Nice guy. Really, really nice.
We heard him speak at the end.
Terrific filmmaker.
Yeah, excellent.
Anyway, we're complimenting. We're trying to copy his style.
We're stealing his style.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. Great. Well, you have my permission. I'll try to be more somber and leave more pregnant pauses in my
we sent him a fax.
on Thursday. Willie Legate. And
anyway, on the tape, the interviewers' questions won't. We're not using that. Only
Gotcha.
statement form. So if he says, "What was Palo Alto like?"
I'll just make a statement. I'll make a statement rather than
Okay,
sure.
great.
So it was a happening place. I mean, it was a place. I mean, Kesey was at Stanford taking acid for crying out loud. And,
Well, that was all later. I mean, this much later. I'm talking about the part I was talking about before was back when I was a kid. I mean, this is like the 50s, and but it was a short hop from there to when I went back there to about 1960, 59 or 60 when I went back after I'd been in the Army, and it was. I still went to the same. I still found it friendly. And I went to East Palo Alto, where one of my friends from junior high school, actually somebody I'd known for a long, long time, was staying at a guy's house in in East Palo Alto because it didn't cost him anything. And he says, I said, "Hey, you think I can stay there too?" He said, "Sure. Bring your car." I just bought a car, my first car, which was a nice 50 Cadillac, a 50 Cadillac sedan. I bought from a cook in the Army. And so I took it and I brought it down to Palo Alto. I had just enough gas to get it down there. And then it died. It died in the parking lot past, just behind the, the building where my friend was staying. So, I just made it comfortable in there. That became my house. That was my apartment. So the first, but I would go over to my friend Laird. This is guy Laird, who I've known almost all my life. I mean, he lives on some land I bought up in Northern California. He's still up there. He was a guy who was tremendously fascinated with all the beatnik stuff and beat literature and all that, and as was I. And so I'm in my car, and then some of the time I would sleep inside in the apartment on the folding bed, So one morning I'm there sleeping, and this guy comes in and he says, "Jesus Christ, man!" He says, wow, I bet you have to shave 3 times a day. He says, this black guy named David. And it cracked me up. I bet you have to shave 3 times a day. He goes, wow, you must have to shave 3 times a day. And so I got to hanging out with this guy, David McQueen, a real great guy. And he and I would go out looking for odd jobs, you know, and I mean, we were like, we were like the Laurel and Hardy of East Palo Alto. We'd find these little, you know, like $20 a day jobs, you know, and we're moving furniture. Here, you take the heavy end. No, God damn it, you take it. No. Oh, look out for that. You know, you're like, totally silly. But he was the first guy that sort of like befriended me a lot, you know. And then sometime or another, somebody brought a little acoustic guitar over to this guy's house, and I played a little. And David McCool, when he heard me play the blues, he killed him. He says, "Hey man, I never heard a white man with a soul like what you got, man." And I was tremendously flattered, you know, and he says, like, come on, I'm going to take you around. He'd take me around to all of his friends' places, and I'd play the blues, and people would go, damn, isn't that white boy play the blues, you know? It was great. Everybody feed me, you know, and pretty soon I was totally comfortable there, you know. I didn't think anything of it, really, you know. I didn't, I guess it was exceptional, but to me, it felt very normal, you know. I mean, I didn't really know anything about the blues, but my brother had been a fan of rhythm and blues, and I'd been listening to it, you know, hell, all my life. I mean, at least as far as I can remember, you know. I mean, this is back in the days when guys like John Lee Hooker had hits, you know, in the rhythm and blues world. I mean, these funky country blues guys, you know, and the Bay Area had lots of blues cats, old timers, you know. You know, all these guys, there were a lot of them, and they're around, and it was like a sort of distinctive style in the Bay Area. And then there was all that, the chess records, you know, that the Chicago blues, Muddy Waters, and all those guys are so wonderful. I mean, that music I grew up on, you know. I didn't occur to me that, I mean, that was the music that I heard.
Sure. That,
and my grandmother was a nut for the Grand Ole Opry. She played the Grand Ole Opry every Saturday night. So I got that sound in my ears, the fiddles, you know. And, you know, sometime around here was the folk music thing was happening, the Kingston Trio and all that stuff. And so the thing of having an acoustic guitar and, you know, and being able to pick a little bit was like, you know, I got fascinated by that. I heard this guy play fingerstyle guitar, finger picking, you know. Mm-hmm. And I said, geez, I got to do that. That sounds great. You know, I just got to learn how to do that, you know. And things got to me that way. I would hear something and I would just love it, you know. And I feel like I was getting closer and closer to the kind of the golden soul of what I wanted to do, you know, the thing about music, you know. And music got my attention, and art stopped having. You know, I mean, the arts, I didn't even think, you know, I just want to do this. And so I'd spend all day picking at the guitar, you know, listening to records and slowing them down and doing that. You know, that's what I wanted to do. And,
so was there anything about this area, this place that would allow a guy like you to flourish? Because,
well, I'll tell you, man, it was the people that were terrifically kind. I mean, I never had to worry about eating. I never had to worry about a place to stay. I never had to worry about money. I never had a job. People looked after me, and I didn't ask them to, you know, they just did. And I was always so delighted, you know, I was so happy that I always said, what can I do? Can I do anything to help? Sometimes I could help out in some way, but more often than not, it was just out of the kindness of their hearts. And also over there at Stanford, you know, when I got hip to that, I mean, there were all these Stanford girls, you know, the Stanford girls, and they would always bring me like great stuff to eat, you know. And I met Hunter, of course, who was, when I first met him.
That's Robert Hunter?
Robert Hunter. When I first met him, he, like I, had just gotten out of the active service part of the service. He was a weekend warrior, though, where I was a regular Army guy. And so, and when I got kicked out, that was it. I was out. Hunter, when he got kicked out, he had to go back every, like a 1 weekend a month, and all that. So he always had to keep his hair short. And he had to do all these things. He couldn't get totally weird. He always had the National Guard. Okay, Bob, National Guard coming up. And he'd be, out there like counting the moths on the moon, or something, doing something totally bizarre. And he'd have to come way back from that, Okay, Bob, come on back, get your uniform. Oh, thanks, right. So when we first met each other, his car, like mine, had died. He moved it right next to mine out in East Palo Alto, so we were there. We were automobile natives in this empty lot. And the other interesting coincidence was his car had like 2 or 3 great, huge, 10-gallon cans of crushed pineapple that he boosted, I guess, from mess hall, And I had thousands of plastic spoons and forks. I don't remember why I took them. I thought I should have them, though. And they were everywhere. They were in my glove compartment. They were stuffed under the seats. They were everywhere. Every nook and cranny in the car had plastic spoons and forks. And so we would have these, that was like breakfast, hey, how about some fresh pineapple today? Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds great, glob, and that was it. So we were able to make do with that for a pretty long time. That was how we got to know each other, really. That was fun. And but see, and also see, socially in Palo Alto, there were a couple of coffee houses like continental style coffee houses. They were, had a nice informed menu, and a lot of nice, good coffee. You get wired to the ID for 25 cents. And all the children, the kids of a lot of the Stanford, the people that worked at the university, the staff, and of all of the various departments, there'd be the kids were all terrifically precocious. And there was this one kid who there was a San Francisco newspaper columnist at the time named Paul Spiegel. He chose to spell his name Speegel, like Springsteen, Spiegel. And then Paul Spiegel and his son. I'd known his son actually since back when I was in junior high school. Then he was like a year younger than me or so, and he was kind of like the lion of this little social scene. So I met him, and we hit it off pretty well immediately, and we got off on each other. We were both heavy readers, and we both had shared the same sort of cruel sense of humor. And we were both pretty much assholes, and we had a good time together. But very shortly after we were getting to know each other one night after a party somewhere. There was an automobile accident, and Paul was killed, and I and some of the other guys. There was 4 of us in the car. We were all injured, some, but Paul died. So, in the aftermath of that whole little scene kind of pulled together and kind of gained a kind of sense of purpose, because he was like he was a painter, and he had the touch, he had the thing, he would have become good. So that was like kind of one of those little kicks in the ass you need to get you going, that was one of my kicks. It works pretty well. And I mean, really, for me, it just then I started to get really serious about music, and I heard.
So why'd you stay out here? Why didn't you go back to New York?
I had no interest in going to New York. I really didn't. I mean, I liked it here, and I also, the people here, I loved them. I cared about the people that were my social set. I loved them. I thought there was a lot going on there. And I thought, I have time to go to New York. I can go to New York some other time. And, New York wasn't calling to me. I really, besides, about that time, too, people from New York were starting to come out here, out to the West Coast,
Yeah, this is a real creative, sort of a little birthplace of a lot of.
It was just starting to light up a little out here, and that one, then, things started really rolling then. I mean,
This is right about when, like,
this is still early 60s,
Early
like 62, 61, 62, 63, right around there. I mean, I still had a few years to go as during the folk scare, to get to be a real competent bluegrass player. And that was my connection to New York. That's where I met the New York guys. Because they were the first serious folkies. And so the bluegrass players, the first ones that I met that could really cut it, were from the East Coast.
Yeah, big scene out there.
Yeah, and they were amazed that I was out here on the West Coast. Although there was a couple of us out here that could play well. And so that started happening, that reciprocal thing, and like that. And it started, once it got rolling, it started moving really fast. All this stuff started moving really fast. I mean, within the space of a year or so. Then, of course, Kennedy got snapped, boom, bam. Whole other world, new reality, put on the brakes, to check things out, you know what I mean? It was like, that was another impetus. It was like, now what? Okay, fuck you, fuck you, if you're going to shoot if every time there's something that's good, it's going to get shot, fuck it, We're not going to let you have it anymore. Everything changed then,
Sure.
And also that's about the time we started to leave Palo Alto. I mean, Palo Alto started seeming too small, and other things were calling us.
The city seemed like a better.
Well, the city, was the acid test actually is what got us, which was like we went to the moon or Mars or something like that. We went to another reality rather than this one, and it served better, it was truly cosmic kind of entertainment, but it actually brought a lot of Palo Alto along with it. It's strange, I mean, it's hard to sort of separate one thing in and out, but it was the lifestyle, the way of life there was easy. People weren't afraid. You get out and be on the streets in the middle of the night hollering, and nobody would bother you. The police wouldn't think there was somebody being killed. You know what I mean? It wasn't worst case preparation. They weren't ready for the most horrible thing to be happening, and it rarely was horrible. It was almost always innocent and pleasant, even, and it was just a great way to live. It was a great place to live, a great way to live, and the people were nice, and we were lucky enough to be able to get weird at a time when, as far as psychedelics were concerned, they were still legal, for one thing, and the other thing was that nobody knew what the fuck they were.
Yeah.
So if your behavior defies description, you know what I mean? What's the guy doing? Well, I don't know. He's sort of standing up. So he's over upside down by the lamppost over there. He's got one leg wrapped around the telephone pole, and he's putting his arms out and he's screaming something about Merry Christmas. I don't know what the hell. It's like, if your behavior is so weird, and but you're not harming anybody or scaring anybody. I mean, the people realize that this guy's harmless. It really, it's okay. You can be as weird as you want. It's like in England. They have this thing where, as long as you don't bother anybody, you can be as weird as you want, and they kind of treasure their mad people. They kind of like, if you're crazy, no problem.
Less uptight, more fun time, more just a period that.
Well, for us, that we had as much time to be young and carefree and having a wonderful time, that sort of life. We had as much of it as anybody could possibly want. I mean, it was really great. It really was. And it was also enough time to develop the skills that you needed. Like for me, for being able to spend enough time working on my playing so that it wasn't developed in a frenzy. It was developed out of love, my own personal love for it, And,
that's really well put.
I don't know any other way to say it really, because I did meet people who learned under other ways, other sort of other envelopes, and it's not that they could do. I mean, what they did technically was any better or anything, but sometimes it had a darker purpose to it, sort of. I mean, it was good and everything; it was well executed, but sometimes it lacked the thing of heart, How music should always have it, even mechanistic music.
We're 2 minutes to the end of the tape.
I got nothing else to say about it.
Well, I want to. John was very, 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 very pumped about this, and I promised him that I would not.
What you're trying to do with this film is show that Palo Alto and that part of the world, this part of the world is going through a genuine historical renaissance period. And music's part of that, art's part of that. You're more than just a musician.
I don't think that Palo Alto had a clue. The reason anything at all might have happened there was because there was a lot of people there, and it's a college campus is always kind of protein. It was not that anybody welcomed any of it. Nobody welcomed any of it, really. And it was a couple of doctors that opened up the place there at the top of the tangent. And they were slightly visionary, just slightly, and they liked the music, and that was it. It wasn't because they're any part of, say, the university or the hierarchy of the community itself, not a clue. I mean, I don't know whether it would have been possible for it to do anything but scare it. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have been helpful. And the nature of what was happening was so delicate, so bizarre. And it had a kind of, a kind of unfocused, diffuse. It's the sort of thing that it's difficult to talk about even now, because there was the point about it was that it didn't have a center. It wasn't directed by outside forces or by the normal history as we normally perceive it. It was not about those things. That wasn't what it was, and that wasn't what it was about. And it was about possibilities, I think, and they were in the air. They were just in the air, and everybody was also waiting with the sense of something is about to happen. Was so imminent. You know what I mean? It was just like everybody knew it. Everybody was waiting for this thing to happen. Something was going to happen. And it was just so obvious, and everybody did what they could to make it happen. People would try weird shit. I mean, everybody got turned on to pot during this period and loved it. Everybody tried other forms of other kinds of drugs, crystal and so forth, and didn't like it so well, or liked it a lot, but it made them crazy. Did lots of, and really, what it was everybody was waiting for psychedelics. Everybody was waiting for LSD because of what we'd heard about it, what everybody had heard about it, and it seemed like that thing of the sense of losing faith in this reality. Like, this reality is not, this is not that great. This is not that good. This can't be all there is. There's just not enough to it. There's not enough to it. It's not that interesting. It isn't enough fun. It doesn't require enough of me. It's not a challenge. There's got to be more. When LSD hit the streets finally, I was like, yeah, there. Here, you were looking for more? Here it is. This is more. This is more than you can imagine. I mean, and for me, that's what that was. I mean, it's not. I realize that drugs are not politically correct right at this moment, but psychedelics, for the people that were waiting for them, they were exactly the thing. I mean. Because they have that way of being individual. They're not, people don't experience exactly the same effects. They experience themselves. And sometimes it turns out to be utterly delightful. Sometimes it turns out to be a total bummer. But either way, you've got more of it to work with when you've taken psychedelics and seen the bigger picture, So sometimes it meant that I got to get to work or I'm going to be this way all my life, Sometimes that's what it meant. Sometimes it meant no more psychedelics. They're too weird for me, but I think I'd better go join a monastery somewhere, because the only way to work this out is the long, slow way, unpanicked, unhurried. Some people, it was like psychedelics. Yes. Okay. Where's the next terminal? I'm ready, I'm ready to move to the next square, and it hit people where they needed to be hit, and it was the thing that everybody was waiting for. And it was, and everything opened up right in front of it, boom, like that. It was truly amazing. And that hole lasted for about a year and a half, maybe. It was like this magic kind of hole. When LSD was still legal, it hadn't been made illegal yet, and the idea of being high was so new that nobody recognized it, and you were free to freak out completely, get as high as you wanted to, out in the open, and they couldn't take you to jail for it. And that was really a wonderful thing to have experienced. That was like, after that, there's not really, for me in my life, there's no turning back. There was no back. Not just a matter of turning back, but the idea of backness was gone. And like all directions were forward from there. You know what I mean? And as far as like information and material, like it's like having so much material. And it stays with you too. Like the experiences that I experienced back in those days, the psychedelic days, they were more real than anything I ever experienced on this level. They were way more real. They were so much more detailed and lifelike and beautiful and horrible and everything else, and all the way down to the teeniest, weeniest, smallest iota of discriminate material. Every bit of it was, was incredible. I don't know. That's just one of the reasons I sort of disqualify myself from this discussion on a serious level, is because there simply is conventional wisdom won't accept this subjective of a overview. For me, that's the point. That's what it was about. It was subjective, and I'm so glad that it happened in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And that I got to experience it at its purest. I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world, really. And hey, that's it.
You remember? Go for it. Yeah. You remember the first time you met Bill Kreisman?
I don't remember the first time. I met him when he was working with a friend of mine named Troy Weidenheimer. We played in a band together. I forget what the name of the band was, but we played in a band together. I played bass and he played drums. When he was 17 years old, and he was like, he's a teenager, just a kid, And I played a few shows with him and stuff like that. And then when me and Big Fan and Weird talked about putting together an electric blues band or something of that sort, the only drummer that I really played with around that area that I felt really had a nice feel was Bill, who was 17 or 18. By now he's 18. So I talked to him, and he was just as weird as ever, and I really didn't understand anything he said. He was just like, I said, what? He said, okay. I asked him if he wanted to play. He was delighted. He was just all over the place, and so we played. It was great. He worked out fine. I didn't realize what a truly strange person he was until we started getting high together. Then that was a whole other Bill jumped out. And, it was, that Bill was a total imp.
He told me that he remembers meeting you or seeing you play at the Tangent upstairs.
Yeah.
He had told himself, I'm going to play with that guy.
Oh, that's neat.
What about Pigpen? You write about Pigpen?
I knew Pigpen. I don't even remember when I met him. He was like 14. He was like a grubby little kid, lived down there and near Los Altos, and he played a little harmonica and a little guitar. He used to ask me to show him some guitar licks, blues licks, and I would show him stuff. And he picked up the guitar by himself, and in about a couple of months, he was playing, pretty nice. He had a real feeling for the music, and it was in his ears. His father was the first rhythm and blues disc jockey in the Bay Area. So he'd been hearing the music all his life, and he had a real feel for it. It was very natural to him. He was a great guy. He was very funny too. He had Pigpen had a real pixie quality. It was just really lovable, really fun. He was a sweetheart.
To jump forward to the future a little bit, I interviewed Evan Kraken over at Silicon Graphics. He's the CEO over there. He's a real fan of yours. He's got your art up on the walls. Wears one of your ties. You ever met him?
You can afford him.
I haven't met him yet. I'm trying to wheedle maybe a bar or a loader, a computer, his Silicon Graphics rig that I can screw around with. I like the power it's got.
In every respect, it'd be great for those really going towards high-tech music and cutting edge. Can you talk about it?
Well, I don't know about the music itself, and just the approach. It's just part of. That's what we're just moving into the 90s. I mean, or actually moving into the next millennium. It's our music wants to have as many possible ways to express itself as it can, and it's just another tools, more tools.
Do you ever get together with some of the companies that develop this stuff?
No, not really. I tend not to be. I'm not so far. Let me put it this way: my ideas tend not to be musical. I don't really want to be in the musical part of it. I'm much more interested in the graphic part of it. It's possible that sometime I'll get into the musical part of it, and I mean I'm converse with it. I'm conversant,
Okay.
But it isn't my favorite way of working yet.
Did you work with Roy Rosenfeld? Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah.
Planet Blue, I think is what it works now.
Down in LA?
Yeah.
Yeah, Maury, yeah.
I saw the video you guys made. It was really nice.
Yeah. He's a nice guy. Yeah, he's good too.
Now, Dana Morgan was a place you used to teach. And Corey Lurios, I've talked to a few times. He's going to write the music for this after we're all through. We hope. And he said that he used to teach at Dana Morgan and go over to Swain's House of Music. And
I didn't really work at Swain's. I used to work at Dana Morgan's, and then me and Bob used to go over and work at this place called what the hell is it called?
Drapers?
Guitar. Maybe it was Drapers. No, it wasn't Drapers. It was Guitar City or something like that. It was, what the hell is the guy that ran it? I don't remember. It wasn't Drapers, I don't think. No. It was up on El Camino. And this very nice guy ran the place. It was a good little guitar store. Weir and I both taught up there, like after hours kind of. It was our moonlighting job.
with the Warlocks, I remember you going to see Bill play because he was my drum teacher back in those days. And you were playing at Magoo's.
Magoo's, yeah, that was our first gig. I know. Well, yeah, close to it. Mighty early, yeah.
And I asked him how much he was getting paid, and he said free beer and pizza.
Yeah, something like that. I don't even know if we got pizza, to tell you the truth. We didn't charge anybody anything to get in or anything. But the place was packed. It was packed to the rafters. We played on Tuesday night or something like that. The second Tuesday night we played, the place was absolutely floor to ceiling. I mean, it was on the street. It was just totally, it was amazing. It was incredible. I mean, the first night we played, it ended up that way. Second night we played, it started that way. It just got more and more intense, and they didn't let us play the third night. That was it. Too much, too much going on.
And then with one of the questions I wanted to ask is that you've been associated with people like King Kesey and Jack Cassidy, who's great minds from back in those days.
Well, not Jack Cassidy, Neil Cassidy. Yeah.
Was there something too? Could you have done that in Boise, Idaho?
I don't think so. I think you'd have to be around the Bay Area, but you also had to be a fan of that world. I mean, it would help to have read the books and know. And I mean, Neil Cassidy was always around in the world that I was in. He was like peripheral to it somewhere or another. When I was at the Art Institute, he was somewhere around North Beach there. I knew people who knew him, and I knew people who knew him all over the way. And finally, I got pretty close to him myself. I got to be good friends with him, and he was one of those guys that truly was a very special person, and one of those things. I mean, for me, my life is. Psychedelics and Neil Cassidy are almost equal in terms of influence on me. I mean, because Neil, I don't even know how to say it. I don't even know how to say it. He was his own art. It's like he wasn't a musician. He was a Neil Cassidy. You know what I mean? He was like a set of one. And he was it. He was the whole thing, top, bottom, and beginning, everything. And people knew it. And people would be drawn to it and destroyed, or else they would be repelled from it. And maybe people reacted every conceivable way. I thought he was hilarious. I thought he was just the greatest thing in the world. I really loved him, and I had no fear of. I never worried about whether I was going to lose my life riding in a car with him. I knew I was going to lose my life. I didn't worry about whether I was going to. I knew I was going to. But learning how to give everything up like that is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful tool. And I don't know how else I could have learned it. Nothing else would have made me learn it. Just like racing over San Francisco, like the San Francisco, say the Pacific Heights, at like 65 miles an hour, making those hills and those corners and going through the signals and in the middle of traffic, just, I'm doing things where, we can't possibly make this corner. Don't even try it. And the Neil is like, he doesn't even look like he's paying attention to anything, to the road or anybody or anything. And he's like, and he just whips it, and you look out the window and you realize you're on the sidewalk, and you're like a half an inch away from a telephone pole over here and things. I mean, it's just insane, totally insane. You're totally safe. Nothing happened. You can't believe that you were able to. He did it all the time. And that was the thing that he was truly great at. There was other things that he was merely very, very good at, but that was the thing he was truly great at. He was really something. He was enough to boggle about, quite a few people. I mean, Neil was very taken with, Kesey was very taken with him, and obviously Jack Kerouac was, and he was an unbelievable human being. The energy that he had, and the vocabulary that he had of gestures and expressions, and it was just, oh boy, he was funny. And he also had a tremendous rap too. I mean, I don't know what to say about Neil. Some people just thought he was crazy. He's crazy. Get him out of here. I don't want him here. A lot of women, he frightened them. He was too out of control. And a lot of men felt that they had to somehow get involved in contests with him, of some kind. And that didn't work out good. They'd always, I don't know what, they'd always try something and it didn't work out. The thing about Neil was people wanted to compete with him without having any sense of what competing with him might mean. You know what I mean? What is it competing with him? Staying up all night? I don't know what is competing with him. It was one of those things that wasn't obvious. Anyway, if you want any more than that, you're going to have to talk to somebody else.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're back. Whoa. So much you can unpack from those two interviews. A more exuberant, cohesive Jerry, but the spirit of Jerry still active and thriving just a few months before he graduated. Wow. There's just a lot there. It really was an incredible history lesson. The birth of the psychedelic counterculture with the acid tests and the Grateful Dead being a part of it, and then maintaining it, amplifying it, and keeping it alive still to this day. That original energy. And there were so many little tidbits of knowledge if you happen to catch it. Things like how the human be-in was the first noticeable event where at least Jerry felt like there was a community there, that all of these people, these similar frequency people, that were outside of the mainstream matrix of that time came together and noticed each other. There was so many really interesting historical things to unpack. His school years, his time with the Merry Pranksters, how much Neil Cassidy influenced him. And that whole aspect of how getting over fear, being with Neil Cassidy, like he said, driving and doing all of those things where he knew he was going to die. But that got him past something. When he was able to remove the fear, because there was no choice but to remove the fear, it elevated his consciousness and actually changed his frequency, which he then, of course, brought into his guitar playing and the psychedelia there. He did a great job. Nobody else can really explain it better than the man himself. He did a great job explaining the dynamics of playing with musicians who each want to express themselves with a unique voice, with, as he said, authentic inspiration to channel something, to bring something in. They did that. They knew they were doing it. They knew they were adding to consciousness. They knew that energy, that expression was adding to consciousness, bringing love and positive energy, more awareness. These people at these shows having these experiences had expanded awareness. They have these experiences, and then what do they do with that? They store that in their auric field, which then influences the fabric of reality itself through various means. That frequency shift just vibrates outward, right? And then affects the other things that pick up on that frequency. People, animals, life itself, matter. They brought all of that into their experience. And of course, he talked about the acid test, which I have to tell this story because I mentioned it earlier. I went to the final public acid test that happened New Year's Eve, 1998 in Eugene, Oregon. It was called the Time Machine because they were doing an acid test and bringing it back. They reserved the bottom floor of the Hilton Hotel in Eugene. I think it has changed hands at this point, but then it was the Hilton. It was a very formative experience for me because I wasn't even 21 yet at that point. I went in with a fake ID. Of course, no one was really checking, but I had one just in case because it was a 21 and over event. And there were people imbibing in LSD and sharing. Of course, I imbibed. And we went into the bottom floor of the Hilton Hotel where the Merry Pranksters, all of them, because Ken was still alive at this point. Everyone that was still alive was there. They had decked it out with cool designs, functional artwork. There was all of these cool things all over the venue. It was like the acid test. So everyone got really, really high on LSD, including myself. And they told stories and shared experiences, and there was so much going on. And in fact, I was so high, I didn't retain all of it, though I do talk about it on my appearance on the No Simple Road Show, episode number 48, way before Midnight on Earth. But what's interesting is that after their big discussion and the other things that I can't really recollect, they passed out instruments. They passed out instruments to everyone. Harmonicas, drums, things like that. And I was very into hand drumming, you know, like duckets, you know, things like that. The very kind of hippie thing to do, I guess. I loved it. Anyways, so here are some drums, some hand drums right there to play. And here I am just lit to the gills on LSD. So I'm on the drums, you know, just crushing it in my own mind. Hopefully I was. And this other wonderful human being jumped on another drum, this dude. And we were just killing it on the drums. I'm laying down a rhythm. He's laying down something on top of it. The magic's happening. I'm playing. And then there was a point where we were our output, our energetic output was so prominent within that acid test experience that everyone started playing instruments in sync with our drumming. And then they took the stage lights or some lights and kind of shined it on us. We were, killing it on the drums. We got the pranksters playing along musically with their instruments to this rhythm we're laying down. And I felt myself go out of my body, just like out of my body. It was like shamanic drumming where you get to a point where you're just doing it so much that you're just like outside your body. And it was a very psychedelic experience because I already was tripping my brains out. And here is all this happening, this energy. I had to come back into my body and then my body couldn't do it anymore. No more drumming. And then it stopped. And then me and the other drummer embraced. We hugged each other. It was like a great big hippie loving heaven. Let me tell you something. It's definitely not a derogatory term. Hippie Jesus was the original hippie. I talk about that. I feel like, it's a frequency, right? So we're hugging each other. We're loving each other. We're two humans bonded by the drums and the pranksters. And it was so cool. And then later that evening, that same event, it got to be about midnight on Earth. And there was another thing happening at the Hilton, another New Year's Eve show for conventional kind of men and women going out and experiencing New Year's Eve. They had a band called the Satin Love Orchestra. They were just kind of this local disco-y kind of rock band. Satin Love Orchestra. This is before Dark Star Orchestra. So this is Satin Love Orchestra. So, but not before Mahavishnu Orchestra. Anyways, so we storm that area. The entire wing of the Hilton. All of these tripping hippies, just tripping, like really hard. Laughing, madness, chaos. We converge and descend on the New Year's Eve celebration happening on the other side of the Hilton. Crash the party. So then we crash the party and I'm walking in. We're all so high. The crowd is just startled. Here come the pranksters. They go towards the front of the stage, the Satin Love Orchestra. They count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. Now into 1999. Right before that, I made it to the front of the stage. George Walker, who Jerry Garcia just brought up in this conversation, grabbed me, pulled me up onto the stage, tripping my brains out. And I got to ring in the New Year's that year. The Merry Pranksters and the Satin Love Orchestra on stage, tripping my probably eyes looked like saucers. I would be very thrilled if someone found pictures of that. I've been looking for decades now. Nothing. There's no record of that. Barely any. I found an old newspaper article. We were there. That's my experience with the Merry Pranksters and the acid test. Pretty wild, right? I can't believe I got to do that. Very strange. Bluegrass. What an effect on Jerry. Where would Jerry Garcia be without bluegrass? Totally affected his style, as he said. And let me tell you, I feel like Jerry Garcia returned the favor because he turned so many people on. Thanks, Tim Leary. He turned so many people on to bluegrass because people loved Jerry and the Grateful Dead so much, and they just assumed, well, if Jerry liked it, I better check it out. And that hooked a lot of American people and probably people around the world, but definitely in America, it hooked a lot of American people on bluegrass. Like, wow, maybe they wouldn't have noticed it before or gave it a chance, but because of Jerry's love for it. And of course, the classic bluegrass album, which featured bluegrass musicians like Vassar Clements, Old and in the Way, was a gateway for a lot of hippies, counterculture, deadheads into the bluegrass world. he just said so much how after you had that experience, you're like touched by a wand and you're different. He's talking about frequency shifts, the change in being that happens when you have a third eye opening experience. In this context, he's talking about psychedelics, but that is what happens. You have a frequency shift. Once you integrate and learn something, you can't go back. Like there's no turning back. And one of the things I think that I found most important about these interviews and how Jerry presented himself was that he had a very non-judgmental view of his own behavior. There was actually zero judgment of his own behavior. He looked at his own behavior from a completely selfless perspective. He talked about how he used to hide all these plastic forks and spoons for some weird reason in his car. And he thought it was strange, but had no judgment about it. He's just like, wow, that was some weird thing that I did. Why did I do that? I don't know. And then moved on laughing at it. There wasn't an attachment to it. I noticed that in a lot of things that he talked about in relation to his own life, there was just this non-attached, very open-hearted view of his own life and behavior, where so many people look at their life with regrets, certain situations you have regrets about, you wish you would have done differently, and you take it personally. A lot of people take it personally. They really just integrate the hurt that they've caused, if they've caused hurt, or just made a mistake that caused damage. But Jerry, it seems, is not dismissing those things if they happen, but is able to have a meta-awareness, an outside perspective that allows him to forgive himself, is really what it seemed like. And that was beautiful. What a beautiful human being. His nature, his energy, the way he communicated, the words, you can tell that everything was very selfless, egoless, and also just so loving. He was so resonant with the frequency of love. It's so obvious. And I'm not going to say he's a perfect person. If you've read his biography, you know he was just an average human in the respect that he made mistakes just like everyone else. He pushed for growth and moved forward in life, which made him an above average person. And there's other things, but he was just a human being that made mistakes, just like we all make mistakes. He just knew how to forgive himself and do better next time, right? Do better the next time. And if this is your first delve into the mind of Jerry Garcia, the driving force, the conduit of divine energy through his guitar playing, then I urge you to take the deep dive into the Grateful Dead's musical legacy. The best thing to do, I would say, is to just see them live. And there's an incredible YouTube channel by a heaven-sent blessed human named Christopher Hazard. And if you go to YouTube and you look for the Hazard channel, you'll find hundreds of Grateful Dead videos, full concerts upgraded to 4K in some cases, all cases 1080p, stabilized, combined with the highest quality soundboards and put on YouTube so you can watch these and experience at least some aspect of it. I have an area of my house that I have developed to mimic the live music experience. I have an incredible audio situation that I've designed over a decade to create the most authentic live sound, totally balanced system. The large screen, it really gives you that feeling. You're not there, but it helps you understand, especially if you can hear and appreciate music and you love music. If you love music, you have to go and listen to a true Grateful Dead show. 1987, starting 88, 89, 89. It's just incredible. 90. I mean, it's all incredible for different reasons, but if you start where they're peaking, then you can see why people are so incredibly moved and inspired by everything these guys do. And somehow they've even adopted John Mayer now, the Dead and Company, with, I believe, 84-year-old Mickey Hart on drums and Bob Weir still out there. And of course, Wendy Weir, friend of the podcast, his sister, she's been on the show. She had a lot to say about the spirit of Jerry Garcia because she can channel Jerry. She has a dialogue with his spirit. And I've spent quite a lot of time talking with Wendy now, and it's more mind-blowing than you can possibly imagine. And it's all real. So on that note, I hope you learned something here about this incredible spiritual person, this musician that brought so much love that affected millions and millions and millions of lives through his music and his friends helping him over the decades and still to this day. Almost 30 years after Jerry Garcia graduated. We're creeping up on 2025. He graduated in 95. 30 years later, still going strong. We're about to hit the 60th anniversary of the Grateful Dead. They're still going strong, selling out the Sphere. It's just incredible. Of course, Dead and Company's not the Grateful Dead. There's nothing without Jerry. Jerry was the conduit, the true cosmic conduit. However, Phil and Bob are equally magical for their own reasons. Phil will take you to the realms of outer space, the deepest multidimensional heavenly realms, and Bob will just open your soul, open your heart. He's an incredible singer-songwriter. Mickey, of course, the space, the drums in space. It's still happening. Still here. You can still experience it. And on that note, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I have. And we'll see you next week. Midnight on Earth.